Governor Katie Hobbs encouraged all Arizonans last week to donate blood in a time of need. The governor also gave at the office.
Does your office have a social media policy, Governor?
Welcome back to Square Off. An offensive social media post by Hobbs' press secretary resulted in the governor asking for her resignation and getting it. It was a messy departure. Republican lawmakers and right-wing social media influencers demanding that Hobbs fire the aide, Jocelyn Berry. That's how Hobbs closed the books on her first 3 months in office. Our political insiders are here with Katie Hobbs' report card. What's gone right? What's gone wrong? What needs to change for Hobbs to succeed? Joining us, our Democratic consultant, Stacy Pearson of Lumen Strategies, and former Republican candidate for governor and attorney, which may come into play in our discussion, Christine Jones. Welcome back to Square Off.
Good morning. Thanks.
I do have to start with the news of the week. This past week, the historic felony charges against former President Donald Trump. As we speak, the charges have yet to be revealed. There are a lot of predictions being made, a lot we still don't know, but I am interested in finding out how you're thinking about this as it unfolds. Christine?
Well, it's been said so many times, it's unprecedented. We've never had a former president who's been charged with a crime formally, and I'm not sure there's ever even been one that's been indicted. So from a Republican standpoint, I think it's very dicey, because Trump is a champion of generating energy among his followers. And so I think we have to kind of keep an eye on that. I also think in the end, from an attorney standpoint, this is really much ado about nothing. There are lots of people who enter into private agreements to pay off people for one reason or another. People settle lawsuits, but they also settle things that they might not want their spouses to know about. And it's kind of a political witch hunt, I think. And that is what's really going to tick off the Trump supporters, and I think actually end up benefiting him in the end, which is exactly the opposite of what the district attorney was trying to accomplish.
How are you thinking about it?
That's the question, is does this unite his base? Does it enrage his base? I mean, those are the questions. But we're really talking about a bizarre cast of characters, a former president of the United States, a porn star, and a number of disgraced individuals who negotiated with her. It is a strange cast of characters, and how this plays out in Republican primaries or Republican, even general elections remains to be seen.
All right. Well, we'll hold it there, and I'm sure we'll discuss it again next week. I want to go back to the forced departure of Hobbs' press secretary as a jumping off point to talk about her performance in the first 3 months. Hours after the school shootings in Nashville, Jocelyn Berry, the now former press secretary, tweeted a short movie clip showing a woman with a gun in each hand. Berry wrote, "Us when we see transphobes." It was part of an exchange about people on the left who don't welcome transgender people. And this was on Berry's press secretary account. Does this tweet by a top Hobbs administration official fit in with any larger themes you have seen in the office over the last 3 months, Christine?
Well, certainly I think Governor Hobbs has presented herself as pro-LGBTQ, that entire community. But I think it also goes to something more important, and I'm not one to pile on to a person who's already down, right? She already feels bad enough about herself. She's lost her job. I don't think we all need to belabor that point, but it does say something about the ability of Hobbs to manage her people, to understand what's going on, to have policies that are implemented and enforced. I think it is a bad, bad sign for the ability of Hobbs to really govern as the top official in the state.
And to be clear, you heard me ask the governor in that soundbite there whether there's a social media policy. There is a social media policy. The governor's communications director told me the office was planning a training on it. So it's just unclear whether that was enforced. Does this fit into a larger narrative that you've seen?
Nobody needs to be trained to not send gun tweets after a school massacre, another school massacre. She made a mistake. Her boss dealt with it swiftly, as has happened in other cabinet appointments now. I think this is exactly what happens. To expect a flawless administration is unreasonable and is never going to happen. It didn't happen with Governor Ducey, certainly isn't going to happen with Governor Hobbs.
So I do want to ask, any conflicts here as we discuss this, any connections to the Hobbs campaign at all? Okay, good.
Yes, sir.
So bigger picture then. What's gone right? What's gone wrong? What needs to change? Choose your adventure.
So I think what she has done very well is establish herself as a governor that is strong and willing to veto bad priorities. Now that she's said no, what is she going to pivot to? What are her proactive priorities? What does she want to deal with water? Does she want to fund education? Does she want to lift the AEL permanently? Does she want to tackle housing and homelessness? That's what we really need to define moving forward.
Priorities. Pick any one of those adventures.
Well, I actually don't disagree with Stacy in this. She has demonstrated that she's willing to say no. I don't necessarily view that as a sign of strength. I do think that at some point, instead of saying no all the time and sending a one-sentence letter back to the president of the Senate saying, I vetoed this bill, you have to say, I'm vetoing this bill, and here's what I think we might want to try instead. At some point, you have to be a leader. And on that, I give her a very bad grade because she has not come with her own set of policies and her own set of priorities to say, instead of the Republican thing that you came to me with, here's what I think we should try instead, and that's what the governor needs to do.
We were talking about this earlier. What I find fascinating is it's gotten little attention, but she had a Supreme Court ruling that basically says the governor can block an execution. That's a precedent. That's historic, and it seems to take the death penalty off the books.
It may take it off the table, at least temporarily, in Arizona, and our Supreme Court, who issued a death warrant, she didn't implement it, came back and said, that's okay, that's not our job. I think our Supreme Court is going to have to work this out, and it actually may end up going back to the ballot to the citizens, right? Because we have voted on this in the past. And I can tell you, when I ran for governor, this was a big issue with conservatives, with liberals, with libertarians. People wanted to know, what are we going to do about the death penalty? Shouldn't we be reviewing this? And shouldn't we take a fresh look at whether that punishment is appropriate to fit any kind of crime? And I think that's probably where it has to go.
Let's end by looking ahead. The end of Hobbs' first 6 months in office will be June 30th, at which point she's supposed to have signed a budget. Based on what we've seen in the first 3 months, how do you think that is going to unfold, especially with some of the obstacles put up by Republicans?
Well, here's what I think. Stacy, you're the expert, but I think you're going to have it negotiated by extremely conservative Republicans, extremely conservative liberals.
Progressive liberals.
Yes, progressive liberals. Did I say conservative liberals? What that new brand?
We don't have those. We don't have any of those.
I just made up. and they're all going to come to an agreement. I can guarantee you one thing is going to happen. Everybody is going to hate it.
Stacy?
Oh, budgets never get worked out in the first 3 months. This is just a dance of chaos. And so we'll see real meaningful items. And what I do appreciate is the lack of the ability to log roll. So the Supreme Court, after last budget, stops this nonsense, the banning of critical race theory or dealing with transgender issues. So we're really going to look at dollars and cents and see where the state nets out.
All right, good stuff. 3 more months to go.